Hello, my name is Bill Webb, aka Billy Indiana, and today I'm going to be talking to you about these two games, Kingdomino and Queendomino. Kingdomino is the first game we learned how to play, and we enjoyed it so much we decided to get Queendomino. Today I'm going to teach you how to play Kingdomino, compare the two games and tell you what the differences are, and then tell you which one I think wins in the battle of Kingdomino versus Queendomino. So first let me teach you about Kingdomino. So here you can see the components of Kingdomino, and the goal of Kingdomino and Queendomino is that you are going to build your kingdom out of domino-style tiles. And these tiles all have a number on one side, and then one or two different type of fields on the other. So let me switch over to the close-up so you can see what some of these tiles look like. Put a couple over here. You can see there's a variety of different arrangements of those different styles. And you pull these tiles out, you bid for who gets to place them, and you place them around your centerpiece, which is what these are. So I'll show you a setup here in a couple minutes. And you play until all the tiles are used up, depending on how many players you're including in the game. There are special rules for a two-player game. You also have these little castles, which you put onto your board. So I can show you a couple of those close up. There's one for every color. It's just a little structure there for your castles. So let me show you a little bit about how the play of the game would go. I'm going to explain a two-player game because that's how we play most often. And first you'll pull out 4 tiles without revealing what's on the picture side. And you put them in numerical order. And then you flip over the tiles to reveal what kinds of land there is on each side. And here we can see this one has 2 water for the lake, this one has 2 swamplands, this one has a prairie and a forest, and this one has a prairie and a field. And let's say I'm going to show you my land, so I'm going to take the blue centerpiece and my blue castle. And with 2 players, you use both of your meeples. If you're playing with 3 or 4 players, then you would only use one of the meeples per player. But for a 2-player game, let's say I'm playing against pink. All right, so the pink player would have their community being set up, their domain being set up over on the other side of the table. And if I get the first choice to bid, I'll pick which one of these I want to score or which one of these I want to put in my domain. And the ones with crowns on them are the only ones that actually score points. And so if I had first pick, I would probably pick this one. And generally speaking, the higher the number on the back side that we revealed before gives you the better tile. So probably the pink player would place here, and then I would maybe pick this, and the pink player would place there. Now the reason this step is important is because this is bidding on who gets to play first. And so whoever chooses the bottom tile actually plays last, and whoever chooses the top tile plays first. Once you bid to choose which tiles are going to be played in the first round, then you bring out the next 4 tiles and do the same process. So putting them in numerical order, 11, 28, 33, and 47, and then we reveal the other side. And you can see on these we've got one that's got 2 prairie, got one that's water and forest, one that's forest and water the other direction, and one that's got mountains and swampland. All right, and so now the pink player would take their tile and place it in their kingdom, and then they would get to bid on the next round which one they want. So since they just took water, probably they would pick one of these that's got water on it to continue that theme. And then I would take my tile, since I'm the blue player, and I can place it anywhere I want around my central kingdom piece. And the key is that this central piece is wild on every side, so anything can touch up to the edges of this centerpiece. But as I play continuing domino tiles, I have to make sure at least one matches. And then I would bid. And since I have some swampy area here, probably I would try to take that one. And then the pink would take their tile, and they're liking this whole woods and prairie theme with water, so maybe take that one. And then I would take this one. Now you can see I only have one to bid for in the next round, and it's the first one, so I'll get to go first. But as you can see, this one won't play here because I can't match up a color. So I could play it here, and you can orient them however you want. So I could orient it this way. You can flip them in any direction. It has to be touching. You can't just place it in space. But because we're just getting started, I could touch it in any direction I want as long as it's touching that center tile. And then we would, now that we've each played our first 2 tiles and we have these ready for our next round, we would take 4 more tiles out and get ready to go to the next round. So as you can see, it plays pretty quickly. And we just continue to do the same process, putting them in numerical order, flipping them over, playing and bidding. And I'll just do one more sequence to show you the placement of the tiles on my domain, and then I'll go ahead towards the end of the game and show you more about it. I think hopefully by now you're starting to get the idea of the general form of playing. So I would choose this one, and let's say that I'm going to pick this one for my next bit. All right, so I can put this anywhere. It could be here or here, as long as green is touching green, as long as prairie is touching prairie. So it's okay that this field and prairie don't match up because these two do. But I could place it this way, and I could place it this way. Anywhere where I'm touching the prairie to the prairie, all those would be suitable. And I'm just going to go ahead and plant it this way. Now, another rule about the game before I move on to a couple other steps is if you're playing with 2 players, you have a choice of playing where your space that you can spread out is a limited 5 by 5 space of blocks, or if you want to, you can go to 7 by 7 if you're playing with 2 players. If you're playing with more than 2 players, then you are limited to the 5 by 5. So right now I'm 1, 2, 3, 4 squares wide, and I'm 1, 2, 3 squares tall. So I can still continue to move up, down, out, right, or left as long as I don't go past 5 squares wide and 5 squares tall. Again, like I said, unless we're playing with 2 players and we've chosen to go for Mega Land and go 7 by 7 as the limit. Let me just finish this round. The pink player would take their card, put it in their domain, say they stick with the theme of taking some forest, and they take the forest and that, and say they go for the water. And now I can play mine. And so maybe I would play this one over here so that I've got some swampland ready, and I could continue to try to branch off from my mountains there, and then this would be the only one for me to choose. So let me pause there for just a minute, and I'll go ahead and set the board up a little bit further down the road so you can see what it would look like after several rounds, and then talk to you a little bit about scoring. All right, flashing back, you can see that now I've completed my domain, and I was fortunate enough, actually I didn't really play it, I just grabbed a bunch of tiles and fit them together. So, but I was fortunate enough to do a couple of things that you can play as variants for bonuses. One thing, I was able to keep my center tile right in the center of my 5 by 5 domain. That's not required by any means. It could be in the bottom corner, it could be anywhere in the domain. It does not have to be in the middle, but there is one scoring variant where you can get bonus points for having it exactly in the middle. And then there's also another scoring variant where if you're able to get the full 5 by 5 filled in without any gaps, any holes, that you would also earn some points. And it's possible that you could get some tiles as you're going towards the end of the game that you just can't play, and you might not be able to get the full 5 by 5 filled in. But I've got one that has been here as a demonstration. And so now that we're done, now we score this. And you get points for your consecutive fields if they have crowns in them. And so you count how many squares are in that field and then multiply it by the number of crowns that are in that same field. So for instance, in this mountain field over here, it's only 2 tiles, 2 squares, but I have 4 crowns total. So I've got 4 crowns times 2 squares, that gives me 8 points. And then here in my swamp, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, but there's only, there's 2 crowns here. I almost didn't see that one. So there's 2 crowns, so 5 times 2 gives me 10. And so I've got 8 plus 10, I've got 18 points. This field down here only has 3 tiles with 1 crown, so that's 3 more. So now I'm at 21. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 1 is 7. And so that gives me to 28. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 2 is 10, so that gets me to 38. And then these two don't score. There's no crown. So even though they're connected and they're consecutive, since there's no crown, it doesn't earn me any points. So that would be my final score of the game. Again, I could add on the bonus points if we were playing with the scoring of if you can keep your tile right in the center of your domain, and also if you can fill out the full 5 by 5 without any gaps. And so that's basically how you play Kingdomino. It's a quite simple game. and it's easy for even younger kids to learn the basics of it. They might not have a lot of idea about the strategy, depending on how bright they are and what their age level is, but they can easily match up the colors and create their map and play along. Now there are a couple of expansions for this, and I don't have the Giants expansion. Seen it online, but I'm not exactly sure how that plays or how that would expand the game. But we did recently find a print and play expansion called the Court. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about that and how that works. The Court is, the reason I want to talk to you about it, is the Court sort of is a basic intro into what Queendomino is going to do. And so the Court, we got the print and play. I think it might only be available in print and play. I'm not 100% sure, but we just printed out on paper. I didn't even use cardstock or anything fancy, but just printed out this paper. And you can see there's different kinds of little circles here. We've got wood, we've got wheat, we've got fish. I can move some over here to the close-up so you can see some of them here. So here's a close-up of those little discs that we cut out of paper. And you play those on the tile. There's also this track, so I'll show you this on that close-up as well. And this track is for playing these little square properties and knights. So let me show you those in the close-up as well. So basically you put these knights and properties onto this tile row, and you put the top three out in the three first spots. So what I've flipped over here is a knight, and then a swampland with a crown on it, and then another knight. All right, so that's what the components are for the Court print and play mini expansion. Let me set it back up over here on the main camera and show you how we use it. All right, so I'm going to show you how we would use it by putting in these last couple tiles. So let's say that this tile was my most recent play, and I chose to set it up this way so that the fields matched. And when you play it, you get to put a token that matches, so a wheat on that field, as long as there's no crown. So I couldn't put one on here with the crown, but I put the field token there. And then we use these tokens to buy these tiles. So I can look up the top, I can use a wheat or a lumber, a wheat and a fish, a wheat and a sheep, a lumber and a fish. We could just match up the different prices to buy these different tiles. And if we buy the tile that has a certain kind of terrain on it, then we would put it on a terrain that matches, but that doesn't have a crown already. So if I had purchased this tile, I'll show you again on the close-up so you can see some details of it there. If I had purchased this tile that has the swamp terrain with a crown, I could put it onto one of my swamp terrains, and that would just add a crown to that. If I buy a knight, I can put that on any terrain that also doesn't have a crown on it, and it's going to give me population and different powers. So maybe I would put it there during the course of the game. And so every time you lay a tile, if it doesn't have a crown, you put one of these resources on it. And then after you've placed the tile and put your resources on the pieces of the tile with no crowns, then you have the chance to buy one of these tiles and place it somewhere in your kingdom. As long as, again, you don't place it on top of one of the spots that already has a crown. And there's various kinds of scoring that matches up with, very similar to Queendomino. So for instance, this just gives me a crown, an additional crown for all my swampland. But then the tiles that have knights on it, this one says 3, so it would give me 3 victory points for that knight. And some of the different population character tiles earn you points for how many swamp areas. So like there's a person that earns you points if you put them in the middle of your swamp, and you count the 8 tiles around, and the number of tiles in that 8 spaces around that person that are that terrain earn points. Or maybe it's someone who specializes in the fields, and so you put them in the middle of your field, and the number of tiles around that one person gives you benefit. So for instance, this one is a little farmer lady, and at the bottom you can see that it earns 3 points, but then it also earns 3 points for every wheat that's in the 8 squares around it. So these 3 above don't count. There's 1 on the left, 1 on the right, so there's just 2 in the 8 that surround it. All right. And so that would earn the 3 points plus 6 more, 3 for each of these two. So that's how you earn more points. And like I said, this is sort of a stepping stone to get you towards Queendomino. It adds just a little bit more flavor, a little bit more depth and strategy to the basic idea of Kingdomino. So let me pause there for a second and clean this up, and then I'll talk to you about how Queendomino is different. All right, I've got the Queendomino game set up now, so you can see the different components. I'll give you a few pointers about the basic gameplay. You can see some of the differences. There are some new centerpieces with new different colored castles. There's different colored meeples to use in this game. You can maybe notice there's some red colored squares on the tiles in this game, and then the background has some gray stone look to it instead of wood. We've got this player board here, or not player board, but city building board here, and there's little individual tiles and squares with a number below representing the cost. So this one's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 coins, and this is a river of things you can build. This is the source of the river, and then we've got our dragon, we've got coins, we've got a queen, we've got knights to collect taxes, and then we've got towers that we can build up in our cities. I'll show you some of these components here in a few minutes on close-up. We start with the centerpiece, and then our castle. We start with 7 coins and 1 knight. In terms of how the game plays, at the beginning of the game, or at the beginning of your turn, you have the same choices. And so I'm going to show something about a 3-player game here, because it's a little bit different when you have 3 players as opposed to 2. With 3 and 4 players, you only have 1 colored meeple, or 1 meeple per each color, so each player can only bid on 1 tile. So in a 3-player game, we've each bid here. The white player bid, the red player, and the purple player. That means there's 1 tile that doesn't get used this round. And so the white player would take their tile and go over and build it in their kingdom, and we would keep moving down. This tile would actually just get discarded since there's no one that claimed it. So once we've all claimed these 4, then just like in Kingdomino, we flip these tiles over. I've placed them down in numerical order as before. So this part of the game really plays the same, but just showing you that difference. If you have 3 players, every round you're going to have 1 of the 4 tiles. It just doesn't get played by anybody. You have a few things you can do each round. There's 2 things that are mandatory. So the mandatory thing is you take the tile you've bid on. That's how you start your turn. You must take that tile and you must place it in your kingdom, just like we did in Kingdomino. Then you have a few optional things you can do. One is you can put a knight on your board and send that knight out to collect taxes. And you can put that knight on your player board, on your domain, in an area where you have consecutive tiles of 1 terrain. And if you put it, for instance, on a tile, a terrain that has 4 fields, then he would collect 4 coins. He collects coins for those properties that you place him on. That's one optional thing. You can place 1 or 2 knights per turn. The second thing you can do optionally is use your coins to buy one of these 6 tiles that are listed down here in this river, priced from 0 to 5. And they each have varying abilities, which I'll show you here again in a bit of a close-up. The third thing you can do is hire the dragon with a coin. You can't do that if you have the queen in your territory, but if you don't have the queen in your territory, you can hire the dragon to burn one of these buildings, which would obviously be a defense attack, or I guess maybe a strategic attack against one of the other players in the game to try to keep them from getting a building you know would really benefit them. So you can do any of those things optionally. Put the knights in, buy a tile to place in your city, or hire the dragon. And then at the end of the turn, just like before, you put your meeple onto one of the 4 tiles in the next row and claim that one as your bid for the next round. All right, let me show you the close-up of a couple of these things so you can see the details, and I'll explain a little bit more about how they work. All right, let me talk to you a little bit about these different components that are new to Queendomino. Here you can see a little bit better close-up of the dragon. So again, that you can use to burn one of the tiles that's in the river. Here's the queen, so you can see what she looks like. And the person who has the queen would be the person who has the most towers in their domain. And whenever you have the queen, the buildings in the river cost 1 coin less than normal. So the queen will go back and forth from player to player as they put different numbers of tiles into their domains. The most tiles has the queen. If you happen to have the queen when the game ends, then she counts as a crown, and you can put her in any of the different terrains that you have. So you could put her in one of your biggest scoring fields and add a different crown to that. This is just to show you what the towers look like. And as I show you some of these city cards, you'll see that some of them give you the ability to place a tower in your community. Then you can see the coins. There's 6, 3, and 1 coins, and the little knights that go out and collect taxes. Now let's look a little bit at these different tiles and talk about what they do. So on the back they're gray, but when you get them, you turn them over, and they're always red because they only go on the red dominoes. So here's a red domino from the game. You could only place it on the red. You can't put it over the different parts, the different kind of terrains. It has to be on the red. But you can see this one says at the bottom there, we're going to get 1 victory point for every knight in our community. So that's what that 1/knight means. And then you can see this one is going to give us 1 victory point for every tower in our domain. Right? And then this one is going to give us 2 victory points for every field that we have. And so it's not how big the field is, it's how many separate field terrains you have. Some of them are just worth victory points, like this statue, and then some of them give you coins. So this one actually gives you coins based on how many towers you have. So you get a coin for every tower in your domain and 2 victory points at the end of the game. So that's how those tiles are used. Let me come back over to the main board and talk to you about what I think. All right, so let me give you a quick summary and talk to you a little bit about what I like about the two different games, what I prefer, and tell you who, in my mind, wins the head-to-head battle of Kingdomino versus Queendomino. So in this game, Queendomino, obviously there's a lot more going on. You have the queen that's gaining you points, you have the different tiles that you're playing, you have to manage your money, you have to decide when to collect taxes with your knights, and then it does come with this nice scoring pad to help you tally up all those points because the scoring is obviously far more complex than in the basic Kingdomino. It's not a heavyweight game by any means, but it's definitely a pretty big step up from Kingdomino. If I were teaching the games, I would like to teach Kingdomino first so people get the basic principle of how you play these dominoes and how you draft them. That might be new for a lot of people who haven't played very many games before. And once they're comfortable with that, then I would use that print and play court expansion because it has just that little paper, simpler, smaller sort of river here. And it doesn't have all the knights and the towers and the coins and the queen, but it starts getting them to think about how to manage their tiles a little bit better, how to manage their terrains a little bit better. So it's sort of a nice stepping stone. And then if they wanted to go to a more advanced game, then I would bring them to Queendomino. So what do I think about these two games? I actually like them both quite a bit. Kingdomino is actually one of my favorites. Even though it's very simple, it's actually quite a bit simpler than most of the games that I prefer. I just like it for that simplicity. I like the fact that it's easy to teach to people. If people want to try a new game, I know I can explain it to them in a few minutes, and most people really like it. They just like that option to put those tiles together and build something, and it's very pleasing. The components are nice. These tiles are nice and thick in both games. The coins in Queendomino are nice, really thick cardboard coins. All the pieces, all the components are really attractive and good quality. So it's a game that I think a lot of people just really enjoy. I like Queendomino as well, but I would rate it just slightly below. So I would give Kingdomino an 8 out of 10 on my scale, my personal scale, because it's something that I really like to introduce to other people, and I just always enjoy it. I've played it, I don't know, 15 or 20 times. It's a quick game. It's a nice filler game. So I just really enjoy it, and I enjoy it a little bit more with the court expansion. It adds just a little bit of complexity, but not a lot of setup time, and it's still also pretty easy to teach if you're helping someone else learn the game. Queendomino, I'd probably give a 7. I still enjoy it quite a bit, but I'm not really sure that the extra setup time and the extra complexity for me personally makes it one that I'm just going to pull off the shelf more. In fact, we've played it significantly fewer times than Kingdomino. Part of that is we've had Kingdomino longer, but if I want to play one of these kinds of games, I'm usually just thinking, hey, let's just get a quick game in. And then it takes just a bit longer, and it's just a bit more complex to where that doesn't happen for me quite as much just with my own family and our gaming. So that's my conclusion. In my family and my preferences, Kingdomino wins with a slight edge over Queendomino, but they're both really good games that I highly recommend. So if you enjoyed this video or you found it helpful, please click subscribe below and click on the bell if you want to get notifications for future videos. I haven't made very many videos yet. This is a new hobby that I've just started in 2020, but I'm looking forward to creating more and more, both teaching games and just explaining what I like about different games. So thanks for watching. This is Billy, Indiana.